talking about these issues.
How's it going, guys? We are back here with Josh Von Pohl, and we were talking about the budget deal that is going to have to get voted on here. Well, it's going to have to get passed if we're not going to have a government shutdown here within the next hour and 13, 14 minutes. So I was going ahead and getting into some details about it before we left here on part 3. So I mentioned it had $300 billion extra dollars for the military. The agreement also adds $89 billion in overdue disaster aid for Hurricane Slam Texas, Florida, and Puerto Rico, a politically charged increase in the government's borrowing cap, and a grab bag of health and tax provisions. That's a good thing. I think if you're going to do anything with spending, I think it definitely should go towards disaster aid and stuff like that, because these places are still hurting. Puerto Rico is hurting. Not nearly enough was done the first time around after the initial hit. But still, like I was mentioning, it's still, ends DACA, and so it doesn't have any provisions for dreamers in there. So it doesn't seem like it's that much of a compromise. Trump needs to understand, if he's going to make it to a second term, he needs to understand that, like, if Americans aren't to view him in a bad light, or a government in a bad light, he needs to be able to have some certain compromises on certain things. I wasn't a huge fan of Obama, but he did compromise on, certain things the Republican asked for. And Trump, I think, needs to understand, like, if he's going to be able to get any support from the American people, he needs to be able to at least somewhat compromise with the other side when it comes to these issues, because we can't just shut the government down forever. He literally wants it shut down, so he thinks it's going to be a bad image on the Democrats. But there was actually a poll taken the first time we had the 2 or 3 day shutdown over the weekend a couple of weeks ago, and more people blamed the Republicans for that and blamed Trump than they did the Democrats for that shutdown. So he needs to look at recent history and understand that maybe I need to change my ways here if I'm going to get reelected possibly in my second term. And that's another question I have for you, is with everything you've seen Trump do in his first year, there's obviously still got 2.5, 3 more years until he goes up for reelection. But with everything that's occurred so far in his first term, do you see Trump getting reelected for a second term? Do you see Trump even making it to a second term, and why?
I do not see Trump getting a second term at all.
Yeah,
That's
and
laughable.
Right, and it'll be interesting to see who goes up against him on the Democratic side. It doesn't seem like it's going to be really anybody. Say it again?
So as long as it's not Hillary, they'll probably win.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. Like and I've mentioned this multiple times, literally the Democrats could have ran anybody but Hillary Clinton. They would have had a pretty good shot to win, or they would have won. So right now, I think a lot of people are talking about Biden. The people are still talking about possibly Bernie. I don't know if we'll see him again. A lot of people are talking about people like Kirsten Gillibrand and Cory Booker. I haven't seen the name of the person I would like to see run against him, Tulsi Gabbard from Hawaii. But there's a big list of people who they plan on possibly running in 2020. Biden's at the top of the list. Bernie's right below that. And then, like I mentioned, Gillibrand, the governor from Colorado, which I cannot pronounce his name, him as well. So it'll be interesting to see. I think Trump's going to have a hard time getting reelected if he doesn't learn his consequences, because the American people are not happy when he doesn't compromise with people, and when it comes to government shutdowns, they put a lot of blame on him, and he needs to learn from the history of that. So we'll see what happens, but that's just my thoughts on all of that situation. Let me go ahead and pull this up here real quick. Warriors dropped a couple more games this week, which was frustrating. I saw that. They lost to the Thunder by 20. I don't think it's that big of an issue. I think that the Warriors will still be able to hold on to the number 1 seed by the end of the season. It does worry me. It does worry me that if the Rockets do end up being number one, or even when they play each other in the playoffs, it's going to be a tough team to beat for sure. Okay, so I got a question from Al here. He said, Bernie or Trump if you had to pick in 2020? That's a tough one. What do you say on that, Josh? Would you say Bernie or Trump if you had to pick in 2020?
I'd probably still go with Trump. Just 'cause of what, I don't really like Bernie's views all too much.
It's tough. I mean, Bernie has literally told people who are hurting when it comes to their small business, when it comes to health insurance, that they should be forced to basically give them health care, even when they literally told him to his face, we can't afford that. So he's just not a good person. He claims to be so against the rich. He has 3 houses, 2 relatively close to each other. And he's a likable person, but I don't see the American people voting him in personally. I don't see him as electable again, personally. I would probably myself shoot myself in the face and pick Trump. I don't know. That's tough, man. Because they're both, to me, are just equally not great. The next thing I wanted to bring up, that I was trying to bring up, but it was taking too long to load. So within these last week, the stock market has plunged over 2,200 points. So Friday, it went down 666 points, and then it dropped another 1,000 on 1,100 points on Monday. Got all the way down to 1,500 points down on Monday. It went back up a little bit on Tuesday and Wednesday, but today it took another tumble and dropped 1,000 points. In the last hour and a half the market was open, it dropped over 400 points. And my question to you on this is, the stock market is still way over 20K. It's at 23,860 as we speak. Do you see this trend keeping up? Do you see the stock market continue to keep dwindling down? And if so, do you think that there could be a possible economic crash here in the near future? Or do you think it's just a blip, and do you think it'll keep going back up and to return to normal?
Man, it's just so hard to predict what the stock market's going to do.
Yeah.
If you could, you'd be rich. But anyways, I think it's gonna come even out here pretty soon. I don't think it's gonna drop much more.
Yeah, I hope so. I hope you're right, and I've heard that too, because I know that a lot of people, when they see this stuff, will just go out there and get scared and everything. I don't think people really should get super scared until it gets under 20K, but I definitely think it's something that should be looked at. Knowing the trends of what happened back in 2008, when the stock market was right before it crashed, it had a boom, and it was going up quite a while under Bush. And then it just all of a sudden just crashed, and that's when we had the Great Recession. The housing market crashed, and I don't want to see that happen again. I don't think it's going to happen again like that. If it does, it's going to be in a different way this time. And I hate to say this. I was talking to a few people about this. I don't want to see any crash, because I don't want to see anybody get hurt. But I'm not going to lie. If 2 or 3, 4 years from now there was a house market crash, that's when I'm going to basically be out of college and looking for housing. So, it sounds so selfish saying that. And obviously I don't want bad things to happen to people. But that'd be good for me. I don't personally think, though, in my opinion, there is going to be a crash. I think it is going to end up becoming neutral again. I don't think it's going to boom like it has so far under Trump. I think it will end up neutralizing around the time it gets down to about 22K. And I think we'll be okay. But I can definitely, because I've seen this trend before in the past, don't be surprised if the stock market keeps going back down. Because this is exactly what happened in late 2008, early 2009.
Yeah, well, that's scary.
Yeah, I know, and that's the thing. Luckily, I'm not invested in the stock market. I'm not invested in Bitcoin either. Which, by the way, that's another thing that's been dropping big time. That's at 4-digit marks now. Bitcoin is under 8K, and has just been absolutely crashing. If you actually look at Bitcoin since December 18th of last year all the way to now, it's dropped 58% in its value. It was at 18,868 and now it is all the way down to 79.36.
Oh man. Yeah, that's
And see, that's the thing with me, like cryptocurrency, because like if I was going to invest in anything, it was going to be in Bitcoin. But every time I think about investing in it, it keeps going back down. And I know a lot of people say, well, hey, that's the perfect time to buy in. But once again, I said, what I'm scared is it's going to keep going down, and look what's happening. It just keeps going down. Now, with Bitcoin, it's even harder to predict what's going to happen because it is cryptocurrency. But personally, I don't think it's going to ever reach the marks it did. I don't even know if it's ever going to get back to that 18K mark. I could see it hitting 5 digits again and getting back to around 10, 11, 12K. But I personally just do not see it ever reaching where it once was. And that's why I don't want to invest in it personally.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think Bitcoin's going to rise again. I think something else will. And we'll have to see anyway what it is.
Do you think you could see another cryptocurrency taking over and basically, I don't want to say shutting down Bitcoin, but almost taking over its place within the next 6-12 months?
I don't know that soon. We'll see. It's just, I don't know.
Let me ask you this question. Are you or were you ever invested in Bitcoin? If so, did you make any money out of that?
I mean, not crazy amount of money. I had almost $1,000 in it at one point. That I bought in around. I mean, originally I had some back in like 2013, but I lost the account information. Me and my roommate had a joint account that we had, but I bought in last year. I think when it was around 11,000. And I bought 600, and it went up, and that's when it went up to, I think like a month later, jumped up to 13,500, and I sold most of it at that point.
Okay. Well, you got something out of it. That's good.
Yeah, it wasn't much. It wasn't
right.
My bet, but yeah, it was something out of it. It was cool just to dabble in those type of waters. I never really invested in stock market.
Right, exactly.
Like in that sort.
Right. Okay, cool. So with all of that being said, and I've never invested in cryptocurrency or the stock market personally myself. I just haven't. I kind of just stayed out of it. I wanted to go ahead and get into our good news story of the week. I do this every week because there's a lot of negativity out there in the media, and nothing really ever good news is really covered and stuff like that. And this has to do something with is really important to the world, which is the environment. So, according to French President Emmanuel Macron, France will be shutting down all of its coal plants by 2021, 2 years earlier than originally planned. Macron made the announcement during the World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland back in January. The initiative is just one of the green energy solutions employed by Nicolas Hulot, France's newest energy minister, to reach the goals of the Paris Agreement. In July, Hulot announced that the nation would be banning the use of petrol and diesel-fueled cars by 2040. Now, that I don't know about, but I'll continue the story. As a means of encouraging the conversation to clean energy vehicles, poor French citizens will be given premiums that will allow them to trade their petrol-powered car for a cleaner alternative. That's a good thing. These actions are all part of the country's ambitious plan to become carbon neutral by 2050. France is one of the several countries that have already announced plans to ban the use of petrol and diesel cars in accordance with the Paris Agreement. Norway, whose automotive market is already occupied by 36% electric vehicles, plans on exclusively selling clean vehicles by 2025. I think this is such a great thing. I think moving away from coal and the energy sources we have now all around the world, and renewable energy is where the free market's at. And And I think that that's great that this is going to be sooner than planned. I just hope that these coal workers do end up getting skilled in other jobs, and I hope that that doesn't ruin anything like I know Trump has talked about a lot in America. But overall, for the environment, for the world, I think this is a great story. We will get right back more onto this story when we get back here from part 4. I'm going to start part 5 here in 1 sec for you guys. Stay tuned.